Good evening and salutations, my GH fan. Ricky, got a question for you. You know, watching him today, it, it could just be me. It almost seems as though he's never practiced law in his entire life. And that's what annoys me, right? Like, you gotta watch this whole thing, okay? I'm not gonna sit there and get play by play, but let's just sit there and say, I expected better from Rick. Okay, you know what they used to sit there and call him back in the day? Slick Rick. We just taking that name back? Even Drew just like, so are you planning on fighting back or like you just forking all of it? Now, Diane came in there, and Diane, she goes hard, right? And she brings up, what did she bring up first? So she calls Carly to the stand. And by the way, even before we even get started, okay, now they both, you got Rick and Diane, they start off with, whatever, their intros and stuff. And Diane is like, Michael is willing to sit there and give Willow 5 million as, settlement or whatever. Not a settlement, but like, I forgot what they called that when you divorce or whatever. But like he was willing to sit there and give her 5 million. I was like, hold on. You telling me that this chick did all this and you'll see throughout the trial, and just the simple fact that she cheated, she broke this man's heart, this man has given her the goddamn world pretty much. Willing to forgive her after the kiss, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I would have been able to do that. Did all that, and he's offering her 5 million. I sat there was like, it'd be a cold day in hell before I give her 5 million. I wouldn't give that chick $5 after all the shit that she did. I had to pause that for a minute and just leave the room. But yeah, brings up Carly, brings up the whole, the crossing the state lines. What else did she do? She did a lot. The state lines thing, the putting herself before the kids when that whole sex tape thing came out. She was willing to sit there and wake up the kids middle of the night to sit there and leave because, she just felt some sort of way about being in that house and everything like that. And I'm like, it wasn't a good look, right? A lot of the stuff that she did wasn't a good look. The state lines thing. Now Rick does sit there and say to Drew, hey, listen, Michael didn't sit there and file for kidnapping charges or anything like that, and that's true. But you also did it without permission. And just between that, I didn't understand when she brought up um, Chase, the infidelity thing. Snitch is saying, so did Willow cheat on you? It's like, well, that's a complicated question. It's really not. It's a really simple question. Yeah, he says, hey, yeah, she cheated, right? But I don't, and I need my lawyers. Okay, I need my lawyers on this one. How does cheating, and, granted, Rick does sit there and bring up that, hey, listen, Michael knew that Willow was married at the time, and he still did what he did, right? And I don't understand how that should affect his side either. So I'm not really getting that. Right? Now, Christina was supposed to testify against Willow as far as, when she used Michael's, medical health thing. Because they do, they bring up the whole, when Carly took the kids or whatever, and Willow used Michael as a bargaining chip and be like, hey, listen, the only way you're going to sit there and see your son is if I get back my kids. But Rick decided to call in his favor and blackmail Alexis to get Christina out of there. And that's exactly what she wound up doing. But it didn't matter because they brought Jocelyn in there. So I'm kind of just like, Rick, that didn't even really work out too well. I'm kind of, honestly, tell you the truth, it's making me sit there and think back when Nina was sitting there saying it may be better off if Willow loses. Because if Willow loses, that means that she has to stay in Port Charles. And it's just like, come on. Like, did you have any idea what you were doing when you walked in that courtroom? Or are you just taking an L to get some extra money from Nina? Because I gotta sit there and wonder about that. Right? I bring up Dante and Jocelyn and everything like that. And granted, when he did bring up Jocelyn, and you know, Rick was like, when Carly stole the kids. She only did that when Carly stole the kids. Like she only meant to sit there and fight back when Carly stole the kids. It was like, well, she didn't steal the kids. She had a court order. So like, everything was above board. And I'm assuming that he knew that. Otherwise, he wouldn't ask such a stupid question. They almost try to make it seem like there's a point where she says no. He's like, no. Are you lying on the oath? And she brings that up, and I'm like, bro, she's not a lawyer. You do have a backup plan, right? Tell me you have a backup plan. Now, of course, he does bring up, the whole Claudia thing. When he took out Claudia. But of course, there were circumstances around that, and it is called involuntary manslaughter. And the circumstances around that being that Claudio kidnapped Carly, gave birth, and was about to sit there and take Jocelyn. Right? So any judge sit there and look at that, be like, okay, you bring up this criminal record, but in reality, the circumstances was the circumstances, and it is involuntary manslaughter. So once again, what the are you doing, bro? What are you doing? He gotta pull something out of his ass because I'm like, bro, listen, I didn't expect Scotty to sit there and beat Diane. Maybe Alexis could. I'll sit there and be like, all right, maybe she got a shot. But I'm like, if anybody can do it besides Alexis, you would think it would be Rick. I had to sit there and kind of renegotiate that whole Slick Rick show. Now, before Jocelyn got called away, well, to court or whatever, she was pretty much going to the pool, and I guess, she was meeting at the pool, Emma was at the pool, Trina and Kai was at the pool, and they all kind of like, gathered around for a little bit. And, Emma's not there looking at Jocelyn sideways, and she says some sort of smirky remark or whatever. And Jocelyn says one right back like, "Oh, you know what? I'm about to go and do my job." So, or it was something along those lines. But she did sit there and mention that, and she walked over to Dalton, Jordan, and Sitwell. And apparently, Sitwell is not there funding um, Dalton's research, which is to. That's a good thing I don't actually have anything in there. Um, yeah, so he's pretty much kind of flipping the bill or whatever for Dalton's research. And his research is like something about making an engine that runs on clean energy or something like that. That's pretty much all he said. And of course, he does sit there and bring up Jocelyn because, Jocelyn walked over there and, saying Jocelyn has been really good and she's been really excellent. And I put it through all the work, all through the ringer or whatever because I need somebody that I can trust. I I can't have somebody that I can't trust again. So I'm like, I wonder what is that about. And of course, after she does leave, Dalton is not there looking at Emma, right? And he keeps looking at Emma. Emma's looking back, and I'm sitting there like, okay, y'all two definitely got history. Okay, this is more than just you looking at her because she got on this little bikini or whatever, and she looking all cute, I guess. Um, more than that, y'all got history. I'm wondering what that's about. Anyway, there's a point before there where Emma's not there talking crap about Jocelyn, and Trina's not there defending her. Emma was not there saying, "Oh well, she went over there and she's what did she say? She's sassy over there, and something 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 whatever, right?" And Trina was like, "No, it's not like that. Like she didn't sit there and steal your work or whatever. Like if she did it, she earned it." But at that point, Kai was like, "Hey, listen, she's gonna be sitting there doing this all summer, and I want to sit there and enjoy my summer before training starts." And I felt like it was kind of his way to be like, you know what, Trina, let's sit there and get away from this negative Nancy. We got some life to sit there and be living, and she could sit there and just kind of be just caught up in her phone, right? So they just kind of left and just went and pulled. And I thought they were going to be gone for a while, like just kind of just ditching this chick. But they did tell her to get in the pool, and she did. Now back at the quartermain. Oh, also Tracy testified. Like I said, it's a whole thing. Definitely check it out. Um, she even makes a joke in the beginning, talking about something like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't supply you any more ketamine or whatever. I guess you're gonna have to find another dealer or something." Okay, Tracy. Anyway, there's a point where you know Brooklyn and Lois and Gloria are, in the kitchen arguing and stuff. And Gio comes in. And Gloria's like, "Oh, we were so worried about you. We're glad you're okay." And Gio's like, "Hey, listen, I just came to get some of my stuff. And, I'm going to sit there and leave. Is some of your stuff in the kitchen? Because, like, why did you go in the kitchen if you were just going to go pack some of your shit to sit there and leave? Because, I mean, that's what you said. Right? So, unless you got some jeans like in the oven or something like that, what the hell are you doing in here? Anyway, then this whole mess starts, right? And one of the things that Gloria was saying in a sense, because Gio is pissed off at them. He's like, listen, I can't trust you. You lied to me my whole life and everything like that. And what Gloria basically there saying is that, hey, listen, don't sit there and act like we didn't give you a good home, we didn't take care of you and stuff. And essentially, the message is, listen, we get it. We did lie to you, but don't negate the good that we did for you because, you know, like I know you're in pain right now, but don't sit and negate the good that we actually did. We gave you a good home, we took care of you, and everything like that. We loved you, made sure you were safe. Just don't forget the good stuff that we did before you start writing us off, right? And so it gets to a point where Gio is probably a little upset with his mom, being like, "Hey, listen, she lied to me my entire life, even up into her death, And that's when Lois was like, listen, we talked to her, we talked to her about that, about I think she said we talked to her about like, telling you the truth and stuff. And Brooklyn was like, did you pressure a dying woman into not saying anything? And Gloria was like, you should be ashamed of yourself for sitting there, um, you know, um, accusing us of that. Why not? I think that's a very fair question. You know, did you sit there and tell her not to say anything? Now she says that wasn't the case. She didn't want to sit there and burden him at that point. Like the lie is the lie. There's no point of upheaving everything that he knows in his whole world. Just to like, she'd rather just sit there and take that to the grave than to cause any harm to Gia. And at this point, Brooklyn's like, you know what, whatever. It is what it is. I guess I'll just have to take your word for that. But long story short, she's like, you know what, listen, Gloria, Lois, get the F about this house. Listen, the servants or whatever, they'll send you stuff. I don't want you in my sight. And Gloria and Lois leaves. Right? And, my whole thing is like, Lois, you probably should have just left because I don't know what you're hoping to gain. Right? I don't think that Lois did the worst thing ever, but you have to understand where Brooklyn is coming from. She told you specific things that she wanted you to do, and you went against those things, right? You went against them. Now you did what you did was best, right? And in the end, it worked out. But you still lied to her for all that time. That's not something she could just snap her fingers. You got to give her some space. And you can't just ask for that instant forgiveness. And like I said yesterday, Brooklyn, you thought at that time you were old enough to sit there and do the devil's tango. And so you have to sit there and take this error and judgment yourself. Like, you mad at them, but you wouldn't have had to be mad at them if you would have been responsible and not sit there and act like a grown adult. You weren't ready for a child. You shouldn't have been sitting there laying down with a man in order to do that. And that's just not on her. That's on Dante too. But like, you got to take some of this as well. That's what I'm not liking. Yeah, I understand her anger, but you put this in motion. You're not going, and I know people are going to sit there and say, but she was a kid, she was a teenager, it was hormones and everything like that. And I get that. We could sit there and I get that. But at the end of the day, you still did that, and you have to sit there and take that part as well. I'm not letting that shit go. I'm not. Here's the thing. I am not the person to sit there and just give. I don't give slack. I don't give breaks. I know people say, "Oh, you never were kids," or Gio was just kind of. I'm not that person. That's not me. That might be Brock. That damn sure would. Well, that would definitely be DC Soap Sanctuary. I don't do breaks. That's not me. You got to sit there and take your L too. I understand all that, but you're not being exalted. Just want to put that out there right now because I do read the comments, and while I do respect people's opinions, that's my opinion, and I stand by that. Now Dante, Dante was at Sunny's, just talking a little bit, pretty much about what he was talking about yesterday. The conversation from yesterday did not change from today, so whatever I said in the review yesterday, it still was the same today. But then he heads off to court because he got to go to court. So Jason comes. Jason was at the courthouse, and he wanted to go in there, but then Diane was like, "Nah," because they're gonna bring up that firebomb thing, and like you don't want Rick to sit there and use you and use Sonny against Michael. And theoretically, he kind of still could. Well, he still could, even as a closing argument. Even as a closing argument, he still could. So, like, Jason being there, well, Jason being there is not going to help, and so is Sonny. Um, and to be honest, I'm surprised he didn't actually use them because he very early, I mean, all he really needed to use was Sonny, if we're going to be honest. But he's just sleeping at the goddamn wheel. Like, I'm like, bro, like, I'm giving you a good setup, and you just like, nah, I got this. Okay, Rick. I ain't calling you slick anymore. Um, anyway, Alexis brings Christina back to the law firm. And after talking to Marco for a little bit and saying, "Oh, I'm Christina, the family screw-up," I'm like, you do realize that your mother can go to jail and is stealing money from a baby because you decide to just go off your emotions and start cutting people's breaks. It's So, you know what? While you sit there and joke about how you're the family screw up, you are the family screw up. Like, you are. You've earned that title multiple goddamn times. So, yes. I just, there's a point where she wants to go back, and Alexa's like, no, because, I want us to go to jail, and, like, you gotta stay here. It seems like, so if Rick tells you to jump, you jump. Once again, it's almost like Christina just don't have a brain. And long story short, Alexa's like, yo, listen, you don't get to sit there and tell me how I handle this blackmail when you out here in these streets cutting people's brake lines, and I have to sit there and clean up after your ass again. It's just like it's amazing. Like it's mm, mm-mm. There's more I could sit there and say about that, but also there's a talk with Jason and Sonny, just talking about how they can't go to the trial. And Sonny's like, "Oh, I just gotta sit there and stay away. I want to help, but I just gotta sit there and stay away." And I'm not gonna lie, and I know this sounds bad, and I don't really give a shit. I'm like, bro, you know what? I'm not gonna go there. I'm not. I could go there. It would really piss off a lot of Sonny's fans. And normally I don't give a shit about that, but I'm not gonna go there. Y'all can guess where I'm gonna sit there. Y'all can guess. Um, Lois comes over and basically just like, listen, look out for you. Um, and basically was like, Brooklyn wants nothing to do with me. I got kicked out the house. Me and Gloria. We'll have to go back to Bensonhurst. And I guess we won't sit there and see her for a while. So, I know people could sit there and say, but she can go back and be Quinn on Bold and Beautiful. I guess she could. I mean, I don't really know her glorious days as Quinn, so I can't sit there and speak for that. But I don't necessarily know if she should be on the sinking ship either. So, just saying. Anyway, I feel like there might be more that we could sit there and talk about, but I'll save that for the live stream tonight. Not sure when, because I'm starting to run behind schedule a little bit. But live stream tonight at 8:30 and 9 o'clock. You can run those 2 times. But check the community tab. Okay, just check the community tab, because also just check the page too. Check the community tab. Because I always sit there and post out something before I go. And then when you go on the page, it'll sit there and tell you what time. Like, it will sit there and say what time the stream starts. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to go. If I missed anything, write in the comment section, and we'll talk about it in tonight's live stream at some point.